I'll call this meeting to order. This is the June 23rd, 2021 regular session of the Schertz Planning and Zoning Commission. Item number 2, a seated alternate is not required this evening. Item number 3, hearing of residents. Did we have anybody sign up? I think we did. I remember seeing one name on there. This time is set aside for any person who wishes to address the Planning and Zoning Commission. Each person should fill out the speaker's register prior to the meeting. Presentation should be limited to no more than 3 minutes. Discussion by the Commission of any item not on the agenda shall be limited to statements of specific factual information given in response to any inquiry, a recitation of existing policy in response to an inquiry, and/or a proposal to place the item on a future agenda. The presiding officer during the hearing of residents portion of the agenda will call on those persons who have signed up to speak in the order they have registered. And we have one person, Vincent, is it Hubing? Did I get that right? I'm sorry? Okay. Well, sir, I'll give you a choice. You're certainly welcome to speak now, since you did sign up, or you can wait and speak during the public hearing. It's your choice. All right, sir. All right, moving on. Item number 4 is the consent agenda. And we have a single item tonight, the minutes from the May 26, 2021 regular meeting. Commissioners, does that need to be pulled for discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
Okay, have you got your mic on there, Gordon?
Yeah, I don't think it's up high enough. I move to approve the minutes as written.
All right, I have a motion to approve the consent agenda from Commissioner Ray. Do I have a second?
Second.
And a second from Commissioner Platt. No discussion on consent agenda. I'll call the vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. 7 ayes, none opposed. That motion passes. All right, item number 5 is a public hearing. We'll hold a public hearing related to zone change requests and replats. This is a specific use permit. The public hearing will be open to receive a report from staff, the applicant, the adjoining property owners affected by the applicant's request, and any other interested persons. Upon completion, the public hearing will be closed. The commission will discuss and consider the application and may request additional information from staff or the applicant if required. After deliberation, the commission is asked to consider and act upon the following requests and make a recommendation to the City Council if necessary. Item 5A is a special use permit, SUP 2021-002. Hold a public hearing, consider and make a recommendation on a request for a specific use permit to allow a monopole tower telecommunications facility on approximately 0.056 acres of land generally located northeast of the intersection of FM 3009 and FM 78, also known as 200 FM 3009, also known as Guadalupe County Property Identification Numbers 153960, City of Schertz, Guadalupe County, Texas. Emily?
Good evening, Commissioners. So as you mentioned, this is for SUP 2021-002. Emily Delgado, Senior Planner. We're also going to have a portion of the presentation by Stephen Mayfield, which is our Water Wastewater Manager, but we're actually going to kick the presentation off with a kind of a briefing on the Telecommunications Act, tower facilities based, since that we don't really have many of these cases, by Dan Santee. So I'm going to kick it over.
Okay. Good evening, Dan Santee, Denton Navarro, Roach Bernal, and Zeck, City Attorney. Glad to see you guys again. You know, if I'm here, it's going to be a fun evening, right?
Yep.
So, I just wanted to share some information with you. Originally, we just kind of had this on standby in case we needed it, but this is not a typical special use permit that you deal with, and we don't have a lot of tower applications come before you. So they thought it would be a good idea just to share this information. So we're going to run through this, and if you have any questions on this aspect of it, I'm happy to answer them. The staff's going to cover the specifics in your UDC, and I know the proponents will will lay their case out as to the need. I'm just going to run through this in general terms just so we're all on the same page. Because we do have to take into account, unlike everything, a lot of the other things you deal with, we have to take into account this federal law in making our determinations on this particular SUP. So the Telecommunications Act is what controls the siting of cell towers, personal cell wireless service. And the thing about it is, Section 151 kind of emphasizes the need to expedite the expansion of wireless service for Homeland Security, for public health, safety, and welfare issues, for all these different reasons that our public safety personnel have to use these as well. So these towers, the idea, the federal government passed this act and tried to emphasize the need to expedite approvals to get this expanded as quickly as possible. And as you all know, within the last, 2 legislative sessions, you started having the small cell nodes and the right to use the city's right-of-way and that sort of thing to further infiltrate and get the wireless service and the 5G rolled out and available to everyone. The way we act and the way we look at these and approve them has changed because of that. So it's not that they're tying your hands, it's that because this need is an elevated need from the federal perspective, we have to further justify any denials at the local level if that's the route we choose to go. The other thing about it is a denial of an SUP ultimately by the city council, not by you, you're the recommending body, but if a council denies an SUP, it's an expedited review at the federal court level. So it's not your typical process once it leaves there. Handled one of these lawsuits the year before last, before the pandemic, in a nearby city, and that's the way it goes. So it went through the P&Z, it was approved by the P&Z, it was denied by the city council. It went straight to federal court on an expedited appeal. So that's the process. So generally speaking, how these work, and I know the proponents who are seeking this are going to have the details for how they went about this, but generally speaking, you have to have the RF engineers use different techniques to determine where these gaps in coverage are. So they have these maps that they create, taking into account all the local topography and other interference that's out there, and they have all these patterns of cell use that goes on. They know the areas within the community where the highest use is. They know where calls are dropped. They know where coverage is lacking. And they have these maps to determine, or try to determine, where additional support is needed, where they need additional, whether it's towers or they need to increase their signal or whatever it is. And they have the engineers create those studies and turn that information ultimately over to the tower companies that actually construct these, because it's usually not, well, it could be, it's not typically the same company, right? You have your providers and you have your folks who are building these towers and leasing the space out to the providers. Once they have that map of where the coverage gaps are, where additional coverage is needed, they have to go out and find sites to construct that tower. Now, the staff's going to cover all your local requirements as to co-location and existing sites and what they have to do and show to the staff as far as the need for a new site, because they have to go through all that as well. So it's not enough that, hey, we have this map, we have this gap, let's go build a tower. They also are required to show and demonstrate to staff that they have looked at all the possible co-locations, because your ordinance, I believe, requires that, and why co-locating will not completely fill this gap or this hole in coverage that they've identified. And you know, it's not always about being able to boost strength of existing on existing towers either. So that's what they have to show to you, and they'll have that evidence that they'll present to you tonight. But that's the first steps that they go through before it ever comes up as far as an application. The other thing is that just because there's a gap, they have to find that the potential site complies with zoning requirements, that it's actually available, someone wants to lease that to them, and that it's a buildable site. You know, if it doesn't meet those requirements, it's not viable. The one I handled a couple of years ago was literally, they had 11 sites. They narrowed it down to where they literally had one site within the acceptable search ring that was available, buildable, and met zoning requirements. And it had to have an SUP. And they did not have other alternatives. The next most viable candidate was actually in a floodplain, and you can't put them in a floodplain. There's a restriction on being able to put those towers there. So just because there might be multiple sites, it doesn't mean they meet all the criteria that the provider needs in order to build it there. But it has to fall within that ring of need. So what the Telecommunications Act specifically says about our decision is that any decision that a state or local government makes to deny a request to place, construct, or modify personal wireless services must be in writing, shall be in writing, and supported by substantial evidence contained in a written record. So that's a little bit different than what probably you're accustomed to. And now again, this applies, I understand, to the City Council, but they're going to want a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission. So anything that comes forward from the Planning and Zoning Commission, it's important in this instance that if there is a denial, you need to have written reasons. You need to have some written findings as to why it didn't meet the criteria. And those have to be supported by substantial evidence. Not just any evidence, but substantial evidence. And I'm going to tell you what the courts have said that means. So while it doesn't have to be in a contemporaneous writing, we do have to reduce whatever your findings are tonight to writing soon thereafter on your recommendation going forward. And we also need to make sure that our record is what is produced here, right? Whatever's placed into evidence. This PowerPoint is evidence, for example. So if we're going to have substantial evidence, then if the provider comes forward and says, here's what our RF engineers, they identified, and here's the different sites we looked at, and here's the co-location opportunities that we studied and would not work, if they present all that as the evidence as to why this is the site they need, substantial evidence to deny would involve being able to show that that's wrong, right? Our engineers, like we have our own engineers, and they say that's not correct, and here's why, and listing that information. So denials based on generalized expressions of concern about aesthetics and property values and illegitimate expressions of concerns about health hazards are not in compliance with the Act. In the case I handled, we had a packed house of citizens, and they were earnest. I mean, they meant what they were saying. They were testifying with passion and emotion about this tower because they did not want it. They were testifying about it could fall on homes, testifying about the causing cancer. They were testifying about buzzards nesting on the towers and how that was going to be a problem. Now, this is a monopole, so that's less of a concern. That was a lattice tower, and it was 200 foot tall. It was a very different tower than what you're looking at tonight. But none of that is considered by the courts. As much evidence as there was presented that night, the courts did not view that and would not view that as substantial evidence to counter the need for the wireless service and under the propagation study that was also entered into evidence. Courts, this is a specific site to, they won't find that it's substantial evidence, the thought that it might fall over. Generalized concerns about impact on aesthetics and property values, or even just testimony of a lot of witnesses, sympathetic witnesses, when those are not, they're just unsupported opinions, they're not fact. So instead, we have to provide evidence from an engineer's review of the applicant's plans, and our engineers did review the plans, and I believe they're in support of the applicant's request. They did review that. Also, comments about the design letter or other evidence to refute any information that's presented, if that's what we're going to have, if the path you go down. Also, you would have to have written evidence or substantial evidence and written findings that it was incompatible based on zoning, as well. Under your UDC, you'd have to have all that as well reduced down to writing. Under 47 U.S.C. 332, really it's the I-2 that is important. It says, shall not prohibit or have the effect of prohibiting the provision of personal wireless services. So I don't think we have any kind of circumstance here where, regardless of the actions taken, we're going to have a discriminatory impact on different providers. This is really about the denial of service within an area, because if an area is identified as lacking appropriate coverage or adequate coverage, and we deny a tower, the tower on the only side that can provide that coverage, I think that's the concern, is that if you don't have substantial evidence, then that could be, without substantial evidence, illegal under the act because it would prohibit the provision of services within that identified area on their map under their propagation study. These are just more cases. I don't have to go through these, but it's going along the same line. So as you listen to the staff's presentation and the proponent's presentation as to why there's a need, that's what you're looking for, is making certain that they've complied with everything under the UDC and that they've met their burden under the Telecommunications Act, that they've carried their burden, they've done the propagation study, they've identified this site, and unless we have evidence that they're incorrect in their studies, then at the end of this, our recommendation, I believe staff's recommendation, is that you forward this with a recommendation for approval to the City Council.
All right, thank you, Dan. Appreciate that.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of quickly go through what's actually being requested, the site, that portion of it, and then Stephen will take over and talk about the staff analysis and our recommendation. So just to narrow down where exactly we're talking about, this is FM 3009 and 78. This is the existing lock-away storage, mini warehouse, public storage business, and then the little green area here is the actual lease site. So it's a little difficult to see on the big map. So just to zoom it in, it is this 0.056 acres. That's the lease site that's being proposed under the SUP for the proposed tower. 5 public hearing notices were mailed out on June 11th. We did receive 1 response in favor from this property here. We received no responses opposed, just the 1 in favor. So the applicant is requesting approval of the SUP for that 0.056 acres in order to construct a 105-foot tall monopole. Per the UDC Article 16 definitions, a monopole tower is described as a self-supporting tower facility composed of a single spire used to support telecommunication antennas. And then we have another statement that monopole towers cannot have guy wires or bracing. So within the UDC, specifically Article 8, there is an entire section 2186 in relation to telecommunications antennas. And then specifically subsection H in table 2186 identifies further where a monopole tower can be requested. So a monopole tower up to 120 feet in height can be requested with the approval of a specific use permit on a property that's deemed full commercial, which is further defined as general business 2. So since the property is currently zoned general business 2, falls under that full commercial, and they can request that specific use permit. So just like every other SUP, they have gone through the site plan certification process, and the site plan certification was reviewed by Public Works, Engineering, Fire, and Planning with no objections. So I'm going to quickly go through the site plan. This is the first sheet of it, and then just to zoom in just on the lease site here. So within 2186 C3, we do require a minimum of 1 parking space for every telecommunications facility. So they are providing that 1 parking space here. Other items to note on this sheet, they're providing a 6-foot-high wood privacy fence around the entire subject property. And then since this is adjacent to FM 3009, TxDOT did review and provided a no objection letter based on them using the existing drive approach. They're not requesting a new drive approach, they're using the existing one. So this is basically the elevation of what that monopole tower would look like. So you can see it's 100 feet, and then with the added equipment on top, it does reach the 105 feet. There's no other proposed buildings on site, structures on site. It's just this monopole tower and then the associated equipment that goes along with it. There are no existing protected or heritage trees on site, but they are complying with the landscape requirements associated with the 1 parking space. So they are proposing 1 Monterey oak on each side of the parking space, and then 3 Texas elbow bushes on each side as well. This is just another view of the utility plan. This does show here that they're using that existing approach. This is all existing concrete, and then the lease site here. And then with that, I'm going to turn it over to Stephen.
Afternoon. The applicant provided all the required information to submit an SUP application according to UDC Section 21.8.6.J. Staff has reviewed the maps and studies submitted and determined that the information met the minimum standards for approval. The applicant was able to demonstrate the need for the tower at the proposed location and was also able to demonstrate that there is not a viable option to co-locate and still meet the need. In exploring the ability to co-locate, the applicant submitted documentation for city facilities as well as existing private towers even outside the city of Schertz city limits, which staff concluded met the intent of the UDC Section 21.8.6.J. City staff also consulted with the city's telecommunication antenna consultant in order for her to provide her review of the application based on her industry experience. The city's consultant is recommending approval of the application. Finally, city staff consulted with the city attorney to fully understand the implications of the Federal Telecommunications Act on this application. Based on the information provided by the city attorney, city staff determined that the applicant met the minimum requirements of the Telecommunications Act through the maps and studies that were submitted, demonstrating the need for additional coverage in the area around El Bell Road.
So with that, because the application meets the minimum requirements laid out in both the Telecommunications Act as well as the UDC based on our engineering and public works review along with our telecommunications consultant, staff is making a recommendation of approval of the SUP as submitted. And then the applicant is here and would like to make a presentation.
Yeah, I want to do the other one after that, too.
Okay.
So I'll just get your attention. Thank you.
And then it's just, you can do the right or the down.
Thank you all. Chair, haven't been in here in a while, so it's good to be back in Schertz. Before I forget, my name is Vince Hebinger with Vincent Gerard, representing the Vertical Bridge, who's building the tower for Verizon. But I want to remind you, the Schertz NOC Network Operations Center is right across the street at Tri-County Industrial Parkway. They have a major facility over there. Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you hear him in the back? All right. No,
I'm sorry?
They can't hear you in the back if you,
Oh, I need to get a little closer?
or just speak up a little bit more.
Okay. Well,
Thank you.
Kind of in the way. All right. So how's that? Better? Okay. Everybody good?
Yeah, they're good. Thank you.
I'll speak up.
Okay.
It's been a long day. So, again, they have a $5 million facility over there, and I believe that's the only tower that Verizon has in the city proper. We had one on Roy Richards, 09, had to decom that tower and get on the Live Oak Tower. We'll talk a little bit about that too, but I want to go through this presentation real quick. And please interrupt me if you have any questions, because it's not really, there's a lot of information, such as your city attorney mentioned, that I have to go through, and there may be some questions as we get through that. This is one of my favorite graphics. This is the reason why we're here. How many apps are we running? How many apps I run a whole bunch of apps at one time on my phone. That takes up, checking on your favorite team scores from everything, weather apps, takes up space on that tower. So there's only so much RF data that site can handle. So here we are trying to get an offload capacity site. That's what this is all about. So this is really talking about the new medical technology running on the apps and all those other things. This is a very important map. This map shows you where they are right now. Again, they have the blue stars are future sites that we talked about with Stephen and Emily, and we'll get into that a little bit more on the candidates. They have a small cell on Walmart. They're on your Live Oak water tower. And other than that, north of this map is the network switch tower as well. So you can see the search ring was pretty limited, and it's really triangulated between all the sites that they have right now. These are reasons that I just write down for my own self. Maybe you guys can read them too. They have capacity issues. They're trying to offload a cell, and we'll show you the RF map there. Schertz APD also uses Verizon, and according to the communications officer, Ms. Kuhlman, they're okay, but they use Bare Metro 911, and Bare Metro 911 needs to be. They've got state-of-the-art facilities now in E911. You dial in from your mobile phone, and they know exactly where you are. I used to tell my kids, if you ever have a major situation, 911 speakerphone, they'll find you. The more sites you have, the better Bare Met can find you on that site, and the better coverage you get as well. We talked about the employees. I think they've got over 120 employees over there at their network operations center that takes pre-COVID. I don't know how many people are actually coming back, but that's a huge center over there. We do comply with the codes as per staff. We're not asking for any variances. Here's the capacity demand map. That red area is where we're having data problems.
Excuse me,
I'm sorry, I'm backing up to the microphone.
yeah, probably, if you just,
I'll do this, and then I'll push this keyboard in so I don't have to be so far away. The red area is the capacity coverage. You can see that triangular piece of whatever on the top that's the Live Oak water tower. And notice that one array is in red. That's 126% overcapacity right now. So RF says in 2024, it's going to be 140 something, and that leads to drop calls, missed calls. Right now, it's trending higher. I want to be specific about Live Oak because we're on that water tower, but they have really, really confined space for our coaxial. So we can only get 6 antenna up there. We'd love to have 9, but there's no space for the coax. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. I'm not going fast enough here. So this is the demand area, and this is basically what they were asking us to do about the Corbett water towers. That the staff wanted to know, would that be a replacement? That's actually a potential future site because you can see the coverage does not overlap in the demand area as well. Here's the existing coverage. Red is good. Red is in-building coverage. And again, we're all making phone calls in our cars, and for the most part, voice text is all okay. This is data volume. But that green area is not good, may not have in-building coverage. Once you turn that site on, it takes care of 2 things. It gets better coverage of some of those rooftops across FM 78 and also offloads the demand on Live Oak water tower. There is backwards in best server plot. That's whatever antenna picks up your coverage, your signal from your mobile phone. And there's the water tower, same thing. It's not a replacement site for this. It's a future site candidate for sure. And Stephen told me that thing has already been built. We're going to go through a site candidate study real quickly in the next frame, but I can just show you this real quick. Number 1 on that area is just too close to the residential. It doesn't comply with your zoning codes. Number 2, all that area is in the floodplain. It's a Cibolo Dietz Creek diversion. Ditch is still also in the floodplain. Number 3 is it is the school district tract, and that's also in the floodplain. It's their future development as well. Number 4, not allowed in single family per your zoning. 5 is the floodway. 6 has floodplain on it and is also a future development plan. And 7, which was mostly maybe the best candidate that was vacant, they were not interested, so we can't force them into anything. Here's an overall map of where all the existing sites are in the area. Universal City, Selma, Cibolo, all labeled Corbett water tank as future. And this is the Network Operations Center. You see that water tower looking thing without the water tower. That's their main switch. Everything from Waco to Brownsville gets routed through that system in about 1/100th of a second. I always do this just to check in cellreception.com website to see what consumers are saying about coverage, and they're not very good. It could use improvement. This is recent. 2 stars everywhere. I'm not sure why it's that low, but this site would help tremendously. So we didn't talk about 5G. This site will be 5G ready, as well as the small cells that are going to be in play. El Bell is going to be a small cell. Walmart's already a small cell. All the macro sites around you also in Cibolo and in Selma are going to be 5G ready. So you're going to be able to do things that you can't imagine. The end game, from what they're telling me, is they want to replace your Wi-Fi. They want to replace your hard lines. And they told me years ago they're going to replace the landline. I didn't believe them, but they have. Just a reminder of the 911 call center. That's something that was recently on an article on the Bear Met. There is, let me go back. Let me just do this real quick. We did a candidate search study, and we looked at the AT&T tower about 4,200 feet away from in Cibolo, which got 50% of the coverage and really didn't pass RF candidate. It also has some overlap for the Walmart small cell. I think you have this hard copy. So that was the candidate search study. It's something that your attorney was talking about. What did we look at? We'll do everything possible not to build a new tower site. So if that site had to be in play, we'd have to build another one. So we don't want to have to come up here and ask you guys for another one. So everything we looked at, the Cibolo water tower, the Corbett water tower. We also looked at the high school field lights. T-Mobile did the Clements High School football replacement field light. That is a perfect candidate for El Bell small cell, but we can't get our macros on that site. That doesn't solve the problem of the capacity and coverage area, but that something on the high school will come into play for the El Bell small cell. RF has an existing search ring called Maskey Road. In Maskey Road, you all know where Maskey is. We looked at the park over there, Delmar Park. We looked at city tracks over there, and RF engineers said that may be possible too. So what you see over there at Clements, on that light pole with the lights on it and then the flush mouths, something like that could work at the park. So they were talking to, well, we just threw that out there. That's an official search ring that may be a candidate. And that would solve that other problem of areas in that neighborhood that don't have really good in-building coverage, and that would be 5G ready too. So I'm sure I forgot about 1,000 things. I'm happy to answer questions for you, but appreciate being here in person. Don't really like those Zoom calls anymore.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you. We're glad you took the time to talk to us this evening. If you'll just stick around, the questions all come up once we get to the commission discussion.
One more thing, the district manager, real estate manager, Luke Connor's here from Verizon. He's the one in charge of all the networks things. So if you have any questions for Verizon, he's here.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right. At this time, I'm going to open the hearing for public comment. Anyone in the audience wishing to address the commission on this subject is welcome to step up to the microphone. There's always such a rush, you know. Nobody wants to talk to me tonight. One more time. All right, we'll close that public comment. And let me just start off real quick by, I don't know what the other commissioners are gonna ask and say. It's a bit of a learning experience for us. For many of us up here, this is the first time we've dealt with a subject like that. So if you bear with us and cut us just a little bit of slack, a lot of it is just asking questions to learn. And yes, that Network Operations Center has been up there for many years. I was the fire marshal when they built it, and you had a comment in your presentation about cooperation. I always found them to be very cooperative, and that tower is unique. And for me, it's become a Schertz landmark because you see it as soon as you come over the hill there in Live Oak and start down into Selma, and it's just become part of the city. So, commissioners, who'd like to start?
I have one question, maybe two, if I could. This tower that you're proposing to build, will it be capable of handling any of the other antenna, like from utility, CPS or GVAC, for microwave? Will that diminish any of the RF capability?
Absolutely. The good news about Vertical Bridge building it is that they'll try to get other carriers on it as well. They could have public information, police department antennas have been gone on those things as well. Microwaves, not as much because we have fiber. But yes, it'll be co-locatable. It's a little bit tight in that area, but we show room for future carriers.
And I was thinking about relay protection, stuff like that for transmission lines.
I'm sorry?
Relay protection for transmission lines?
Protection for transmission lines?
Yeah, the RF capability for
I'm sorry, I'm not following
okay.
the
No,
question.
that's fine.
Okay.
That's all I got.
My only question is, with the height is, one, is this a lighted tower? And two, are we in any way interfering with Randolph and the flight zones? I didn't hear that.
So I will handle the Randolph question first and then kick it over to the expert on the tower itself. So we did provide all of the documentation to JBSA Randolph, and they did a full review, provided a no objection back. They did indicate they would like for Vertical Bridge to look at doing some kind of addition to the tower in order to not have birds perching on the tower. They were more concerned about the birds than the actual height of the tower, so no concerns from them in terms of flight path or the tower height itself, but more of requesting that Vertical Bridge look at a way to make sure that birds aren't perching on it.
Okay.
And your second part was the height?
No. Is it lighted?
Is it lighted?
Is the tower lit?
No, we don't have to light that tower, thank goodness. You know, it's all approved by FAA, and Randolph is at the height without a light.
I want to ask the tower guy. Oh, sorry, I forgot your name. Who did you say was on the light pole at Clemens?
At Clements, that is T-Mobile?
That's T-Mobile?
Yes, sir.
And so if you wanted to put one there, you'd have to go beneath it, and that's too low.
Yes, yes.
And is Verizon on the Live Oak Water Tower, or no?
Yes, we are.
You're there.
Yes, we are.
Thank you.
I have a question on, a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about a potential flyover. Is that going to impact?
So just as a reminder, the green is the lease site, and then the red is the current master thoroughfare plan line for the FM 3009 flyover, but there has been those conversations that, this is just the conceptual line, that this could swing more in this nature to avoid the lock-away storage buildings. So it would swing more this way. Engineering and Public Works did evaluate the lease site in conjunction with the master thoroughfare plan and didn't have concerns based on that potential swing.
Thanks.
I have one more comment.
Go ahead.
I suggest y'all get busy on the Corbett tank real quick. There's going going to be 1,000 or more houses out there before you can blink an eye, so suggest y'all get busy. Well, there's 1,000 you can't see yet.
We, the site over at Clemens there on the light pole came up. I'm a T-Mobile customer, and I'm sitting here seeing it varies between 2 and 3 bars, and yet the tower is, and that's just an illustration of the. I'm not an engineer. I'm a radio user, and so I have some idea of radio propagation and higher than, and it just seems, I've been as, go back to the old analog cell days, and it just seems like every time we upgrade the service, the signal area shrinks. So yeah, I'm somewhat, my house is on a hill, and I have very poor in-house coverage, so it just goes to say. I had some questions, if you don't mind. Again, Ms. Grove pointed out that Randolph is more concerned about birds these days than anything else. Did you? I'm sorry, Vincent. I'm sorry. This was for you. No. And so, do you or Verizon take any steps to keep birds off your tower?
We have done that mostly. From the self-support towers on the monopoles, we're clearly we can do that because we're being asked to, but there's not a standard nesting protection plan, and sometimes you get one of the protected species up there, then you're in really a jam on what to do. But there are some spikes they can add to keep them from landing on any surface, and they're okay with doing that.
And I think that's kind of what Randolph was asking for. We've got a lot of, they come and they go, but as you go north on Schertz Parkway, I haven't seen them lately, other than 1 or 2 sitting on but we've got a rather large buzzard population that comes and goes. They seem to favor the transmission towers up north.
Right.
And then if you go up to 3009 and 35, you'll find the grackle population. And that's becoming more and more. The Air Force is more concerned about bird strikes these days. So anything you guys can do, I'm sure they would appreciate.
Yeah, we're going to try to.
My first reaction when I saw this is why that particular place on that particular piece of property. It's if these things weren't so noticeable, and they're not quite as ugly as they used to be, but nobody likes looking at them. But why there and not further back on that, back towards that hill on that property?
Well, mostly for that flyway, that thoroughfare. We didn't want to get back there and really be into a situation for getting taken out or having to move it in 5 years. We know that's not funded, but it is definitely approved. And we know that intersection down there is packed, especially when a train comes out. That's probably the most busiest train section in the state.
It is. That's yeah. And then on the site plan, we saw that private water line that runs right through the middle of. Is that going to be an issue for you when you build that? Or is that a 7-inch? And I ask because that supplies a fire hydrant.
If there's a water line in there, it'd be private, and we relocate it. We're going to tie onto his irrigation system as well for the plants.
Yeah, the one, I think it was one of the site plans that showed.
One of them showed. I know what you're talking about. It was that overhead line, but that wasn't. That stopped. GVEC stopped it right there at the.
No, if could you bring it up, Emily, and I'll show you. I just don't want you getting caught unaware. It was one of these, maybe the bigger one. No. There was one where it showed up really, maybe it was one of our diagrams and not their drawings. Can you keep backing up and maybe we'll stumble across it? Yeah, right there, okay?
Oh.
Yeah, you see that 6-inch water line supplying that fire hydrant?
Yeah.
So,
I don't know how accurate that map is, because
okay,
we did a full survey, but if we
Yeah.
have to relocate that, we certainly will.
okay. I like fire hydrants, so. This one is more for us as a city. It's nice that they're going. I like those 2 Monterey oaks, but planting shrubbery that's inside a 6-foot-high wood privacy fence that nobody's going to see, really? Requirements are requirements, right? Okay. That was a, yeah. And my final comment, and Emily and I talked about this a little bit the other day. I'm not the kind of guy that likes to be told that he has to do something, okay? And I understand, this is, getting more to be, cell service, you can gather my age. I grew up in the landline, and my wife even remembers having a party line. And now it seems like cell service and high-speed internet is a requirement for everybody, and I kind of get it. So I understand where the feds are coming from, but it's just like being pushed around by TxDOT or by the state legislature telling me what I have to do. So my final comment is, we have this process where you apply for an SUP, it comes to P&Z, we make a recommendation to City Council says yes or no. But after sitting through this presentation, I'm asking, why are we even here? If this is the kind of, and Dan, I really do appreciate your comments. That's exactly the kind of thing I was looking for. Staff did a real good job. They crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's, just like you did in your application, and it's almost an automatic thing. So anyway, sometimes I feel like I'm wasting my time. Maybe something like this should go straight to, but maybe they like hearing us ask questions. I don't know. So anyway, commissioners, anybody have anything else? Okay, what we're looking for this evening is we're looking to make a recommendation to City Council to either approve or deny SUP 2021-002.
Mr. Chairman, in light of your comments, I recommend that I make a motion that we recommend approval of SUP 2021-002.
Second.
And who was that? Richard? Okay. So I have a motion to recommend approval from Commissioner Ray with a second from Commissioner Broad. Any further discussion or questions? Call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. 7 ayes, none opposed, so that recommendation of approval will go forward to City Council, and I thank you very much for your time. Lots of good information, and the same for you, Dan. Thank you very much for that, and you guys for doing such a good job. All right. So, item 6 for individual consideration A, WA 2021-005, consider and act upon a request for approval of a waiver regarding the requirement to dedicate right-of-way adjacent to Schertz Parkway and Savannah Drive, an approximately .720 acre tract of land generally located at the hard corner of Schertz Parkway and Savannah Drive, more specifically Guadalupe County Property ID 64566, City of Schertz, Guadalupe County, Texas. Megan?
Good evening, Commission. This is for WA 2021-005, Megan Harrison, Planner. So just to provide for reference, the subject property is outlined here in green. This is Schertz Parkway and Savannah Drive. Catty corner from this property is the Norma J. Pascal Elementary School, and to the western part is the Carolina Crossing, and then to the southeastern portion is that doctor's office. So here is our current zoning map. I have the master thoroughfare plan layer turned on for this. So as you can see, the master thoroughfare plan has Savannah Drive classified as a residential collector here in blue. And then it has Schertz Parkway here in red, classified as a principal arterial. Savannah Drive was designed to be a 70-foot wide collector. However, when it was built out to be a 60-foot. So as it is right now, currently coming down to the southern portion of this property is 60 foot. And it also extends past the Carolina Crossing as a 60-foot wide as well. Schertz Parkway was designed to be 120 to 130 foot wide roadway. However, as it was built out, it was currently, as it is right now, it is 86 feet wide. When, due to the subject property, they're going through the platting process, which is why they are coming before the commission to request a waiver to 2114-1K to not dedicate additional right-of-way as they are required for, since they're going through that platting process. However, with the master thoroughfare plan, it was done, but it did not take into account what was currently developed on Schertz Parkway and or Savannah Drive right now. So with the future master thoroughfare plan revisions, it will address Schertz Parkway. As we know, it's considered a 120, 130 foot collector, but as it is right now, it is that 86 foot wide. In the meantime, though, the waiver is being requested to not have to do the additional right-of-way for this property, as Savannah Drive and Schertz Parkway is essentially built out to its extent right now. So at this time, staff does recommend approval of the waiver request to the requirement of UDC section 2114-1K in order to not dedicate additional right-of-way to meet the street width required of the proposed subdivision plat. I do have the applicant as well as the engineer for this. If there are questions, I don't know, did you want to present anything, or?
I don't need to present.
But if there are questions, they are here for those questions.
All right, thank you, Megan. Would you back that up? Just leave that, that photo up there. Thank you. Commissioners, questions, discussion?
I did not remember granting a waiver for the piece of property that's across the street, across Savannah.
Yeah, that was going to be my first question, was where the doctor's offices are built. What did we do there?
So Hagewood Village was platted many, many years ago. I'd have to look up exactly when it was platted, but it was platted before the master thoroughfare plan was adopted. So the Gupta doctor's office is relatively new. I worked on that site plan, but the property was already a legal platted lot. So they weren't required to go through that platting process with the new site plan, with the creation of that building, so they wouldn't have been required to dedicate the additional right-of-way because it was already platted. Does that make sense?
And there are, the sidewalk along Schertz Parkway does extend across that property. So they've given us the existing right-of-way. The question is, do they need to give us more? And that would only be how much? Another how many feet?
On Savannah?
Yeah.
I believe it was 5 feet for Savannah for the additional right-of-way.
So not enough
to make any.
not enough for a turn lane. And you know, it really, commissioners, the bottom line here, and you can see it, you know, you've got residential fences that are right up there, you know, on both sides of Savannah, on both sides of Schertz Parkway, and the bottom line is, you know, unless the city wants really in the future spend some money to redo that intersection, they're going to end up buying a whole lot of property. And, you know, to ask that one lot owner, and that's a pretty small lot to begin with, and I think that's probably why they're asking to waive this additional right-of-way. But I think for the foreseeable future, Schertz Parkway and Savannah Drive are what they're going to be. And so the need to dedicate additional right-of-way is kind of, I think, a moot point, other than allowing a little more buildable area for the developer. And this is our approval authority, correct? Okay.
Correct.
Anyone have anything else?
Just to clarify something. On the Savannah Drive, the required right-of-way is 70 feet, the current right-of-way is 60. So if we were to ask them to dedicate some right-of-way, it would only be 5 feet, right? Half of the 10 that's missing. You can't fit a car in a 5-foot right-of-way, so even if we did, the only thing I could think of was a turn lane for that intersection, and 5 feet wouldn't make anything material to that. So, you know, let them plant another bush or something, but I don't think 5 feet's going to do us any good.
All right, Commissioners, if there's no further discussion, we're looking for a motion to either approve or deny WA 2021-005.
I motion to approve WA 2021-005 as presented.
Have a motion to approve from Commissioner Platt, a second from Commissioner Greenwald. Any further questions or discussion? Call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. 7 ayes, none opposed. That motion passes. 6B, WA 2021-006, consider and act upon a request for approval of a waiver regarding rough proportionality in relation to the construction of the street improvements adjacent to the proposed preliminary plat of the Bush subdivision, an approximately 5-acre tract of land generally located 4,700 feet east of the intersection of Old Wieterstein Road and Cibolo Valley Drive, City of Schertz, Guadalupe County, Texas. Everybody's bailing out on us. Okay. Go ahead, Megan.
Good evening, Commission. This is for WA 2021-006, Megan Harrison, Planner. So just to provide reference, the subject property is here outlined in green. Here is Old Wieterstein Road, Dean Road, and then to the eastern part of your screen is the Belmont subdivision. So this is the plat exhibit that we will see later this evening, but I did just want to provide, just for reference for you to see, the applicant is requesting a waiver to the requirement of the UDC section 2114-1K in order to not require the construction of the improvements to Old Wieterstein Road. With Old Wieterstein Road being a secondary arterial 90-foot right-of-way, the Master Thoroughfare Plan has defined the process for calculating rough proportionality of the street improvements that would be needed. The engineering department did conduct the rough proportionality calculations and found that it is not roughly proportional to the proposed subdivision impact to the transportation system. The applicant, however, I know it's very hard to see. Yes, it is raining. It is hard to see, but they are dedicating 25 feet of right-of-way along Old Wieterstein Road. With the engineering department doing the calculations and finding that it was not roughly proportional, staff at this time does recommend approval of the waiver to the requirement of UDC section 2114-1K in order to not require the construction of the improvements to Old Wiederstein Road. I do have the representative here in case there are questions further for this subdivision plat, but we also do have John Nowak, our city engineer, who's here as well.
All right, thank you, Megan. Commissioners, questions, comments?
What's going to happen 10 years from now when we want the extra width on Old Wiederstein?
Well, his question was about in the future, if we want the extra width on Old Wiederstein, but they are dedicating the right-of-way.
Yes, sir. So they are dedicating 25 feet of right-of-way along their frontage.
Along the frontage?
Yes, sir.
What about the side?
Along the side?
The side of the road?
Good evening, John Nowak with the Engineering Department. Are you referring to the other master thoroughfare plan route that would come north, kind of north-south through there? The reason why there's no right-of-way dedication for that route is because if you look at where it would most logically line up would be to tie right into the end of Dean Road. And if you look at the aerial view, that would punch that road right through the middle of an existing structure. If we tried to slide it just a little bit to the west to avoid that structure, then in order to get back to Dean Road, we're going right through the structure on the southwest corner of Dean Road and Old Wiederstein Road. So as we looked at this, while the master thoroughfare plan kind of outlined where you would like a route, it doesn't pin down the route exactly. It can shift a little bit to avoid things like structures, terrain issues, try to get to line up better with parcel lot lines and things like that. So as we did our analysis of this to kind of fit with the city's overall policy of avoiding structures as much as possible with these routes, we looked at how could we accomplish that same goal. And there are other routes that you could make a connection from 2252 down through here and then tie back into Dean Road, but they're further to the west. They'd be west of this property boundary, and therefore we determined it wasn't really prudent or appropriate to ask this particular subdivision to dedicate right-of-way, since most likely that route would be further to the west. You know, we did look at saying, could we swing it further to the east, but then we're cutting through the Warbler Woods property, which we don't want to do that either. So this particular one is a little bit problematic. It's not quite as straightforward as some of the other routes because of those constraints. And that's why there isn't an additional right-of-way dedication in this case.
Okay. Thank you.
And so what we're considering this evening is a rough proportionality waiver. It's not waiving their requirement for right of way, but it's only waiving their obligation to construct portions of reconstruct portions of Old Wiederstein Road.
Correct.
Correct?
Correct.
Yep. So we're again, this is up for our approval, correct?
Correct.
And so we'd consider a motion to approve or deny WA 2021-006.
I make a motion to approve the waiver as referenced in WA 2021-006.
I have a motion to approve from Commissioner Haynes. I have a second.
Second.
And a second from Commissioner Broad. Commissioners, any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, I'll call the vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. 7 ayes, none opposed. Motion to approve passes. Item C. Consider and act upon a request, this WA 2021-004, consider and act upon a request for approval of a waiver regarding on-site sewage facilities for the Bush subdivision, an approximately 5-acre tract of land generally located 4,700 feet of the east of the intersection of Old Wiederstein Road and Cibolo Valley Drive, City of Schertz, Guadalupe County, Texas.
Hello, Commission. Megan Harrison, planner. This is for WA 2021-004. As you've previously seen, this is the subject property outlined in green here, Old Wiederstein Road and Dean Road for reference. So as we just previously saw the layout in green, the subject property consumes this back portion as well as the portion that abuts Old Wiederstein Road. The applicant is requesting a waiver to the requirement to extend sanitary sewer facilities to serve the Bush subdivision. The engineering department reviewed the waiver request and found that the sanitary sewer facilities are currently existing. As you can see here, there is a manhole where Dean Road and Old Wiederstein T, and the sanitary sewer 24-inch does extend down Old Wiederstein Road towards 1103, and then of course goes off of the map here. The intersection of Old Wiederstein Road and Dean Road is approximately 42 feet away from the eastern property boundary. So I'm going to go back. So from this intersection right here of Old Wiederstein Road, it is approximately 42 feet away from that current manhole. Further, per the UDC sections 2115-2D and 2115-3A, each lot in a proposed subdivision must be connected to sanitary sewer. We're going to go back to the also, a sanitary sewer main would be needed to be extended for this property across the Old Wiederstein frontage, which is approximately 142 feet. So overall, the length of the sanitary sewer extension would be roughly about 216 feet. Therefore, the engineering department did conduct their review with the application that was provided from the applicant and did find that they, the numbers that were provided, as well as the location of the existing sanitary sewer, that they are recommending denial of the sanitary the waiver to not extend the sanitary sewer for the Bush subdivision property. The applicant is also here and would like to present on this case.
Okay. If you would, please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Michelle Debs. My address is 5536 Verbena, San Antonio, Texas. And good evening, gentlemen. Megan, can we get that other... Thank you. Is there any, you know what? Can I give you mine? I have the, I need like a zoom in. Is there any way to zoom that in or? No, okay, I need to zoom out.
One moment, please.
Nothing like a woman's purse, right? I have one picture to show you, and I'll make this quick in case there's any more storm. Okay, that's perfect. Okay, so if you are able to see where the lot is, probably maybe zoom in just a minute. It won't let me zoom in a bit more. Oh, there we go. Okay, so so here's the subject track. Here's the manhole at 200 plus feet. Our engineer calculated approximately $130,000 that would be tearing up the road to bring that sewer main all the way down to the end of the line. As you can see, all of these properties here are already on septic, all of them all down the street. If this property here were to want, because it is a multifamily, it looks like, want to develop, then they're far closer to this side. But our contention, we have two points that we would like to make. One, there's no reason to bring the sewer down anymore because there's not going to be an extension. It would just be another dead end. And two, at $130,000, we're now at almost 75% of what the property is worth. And this is just for a single-family home that's almost 5 acres, that's more than capable of holding a septic, just a regular septic. They don't plan on cutting down any trees. They're platting this lot purely to bring it into conformance with the, your UDC. So we're asking that that the owner gets a little bit of leeway and relief after all the money he's already had to spend on the platting, and just to bring it into conformance. And that's our hope, that since we already have sewer lines running this way, sewer lines running this way, probably sewer right here, possibly. I'm not sure what's going on with that subdivision there. We would ask that you would consider the waiver.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, questions, comments? Yeah, Megan, if you could bring your map back up that shows that manhole and, yeah, that one there. Thank you. What's that, sir? I think those are fire hydrants. We're looking at the red dots, Megan.
I believe those are fire hydrants.
They're on that 16-inch water line. Kind of torn here, stuck between a rock and a hard place. The only reason that the waiver is required is they can't, because they want to subdivide the property, correct? This lot is being sold to someone else. In order to do that, they have to plat it. If they were just selling the entire piece of property, they wouldn't even be talking to us. They'd still be on their private on-site sewage system, just like their neighbors are. This is the first one that's come to us that, in my memory, where the property is relatively, and I'll use that term loosely, close to a sewer connection. But on the other hand, they're not just going to extend it to where they can run a line to the house. They have to, by the UDC, they have to extend it to across the entire frontage of their property. And so we end up with basically a dead-end sewer main. And I'm familiar with dead-end water lines. We typically put some kind of flush valve at the end of them to, bleed up. But how do we handle dead-end sewer lines? John, do you have some?
Yes, sir. Since the sewer system is a gravity system, which this would be a gravity system, when a line is stubbed out, it typically ends like at a manhole with a short piece of pipe stubbed out on the other side with a cap on it. So as future extensions are done, as future properties to the west would maybe redevelop or decide to subdivide to split their property as well, they would tie into that line and continue that extension to the west and be tying on to that system.
Okay.
That's kind of the reasoning behind the requirements that are in the UDC.
And I've shut down my iPad, but I know in our package, we had the cost estimate from the engineer. What size line would they have to run that 24-inch line? What size line would they have to run across there?
8-inch.
8-inch. Now, as we go west down Old Wiederstein, where is the next sewer connection? Do you know? Is there something on Cibolo Valley Drive, or do you have any?
There currently is not. As you continue down there, ultimately this line could extend almost all the way to that intersection to provide sewer service for all the properties approaching that intersection. When you get to Cibolo Valley Drive and you get much north of that corner, that's kind of a little bit of a high point. There is another line that comes down from Evo and crosses in the low point, goes underneath Cibolo Valley Drive. So there would be extensions that would tie into that as well to provide additional sewer service for the vacant property south of Evo, almost down to that intersection. This line extension would kind of take care of the other segment of, or other area of property, further away from the corner that wouldn't be able to reach that line that runs kind of behind Evo and underneath Cibolo Valley Drive.
Does the city have any future, are there any future wastewater projects to serve this area? Or are we relying strictly on residential and commercial build-outs to put this in for us?
I'm not aware of any city project to do extensions in this area. A lot of parts of the city are much like this one, where it is really development-driven for the extensions. The city is in the process of updating its water and sewer master plan, so there could be something that comes out of that. That process is underway and still in the kind of early stages.
Because it's kind of the luck of the draw, I guess. The city spent a lot of money on that sewer project, running that sewer line that comes up Dean Road and then makes a hard right turn and runs up Wiederstein. So all the properties, I guess, to the east of that intersection, all they've got to do is run out and tap the sewer line.
Correct.
And unfortunately, this property just happens to be 100 feet the other way, and now we're asking them to shovel out $100,000. Part of me, it just doesn't seem fair. I kind of understand that's the way the city's done business, is the way it's done business for years. But then there's a part of me that says, where's the city's responsibility to provide services to its residents? Okay? Our current model, we're making the residents provide those services themselves. And that's kind of that's kind of the fence I'm sitting on right now. Yeah, but typically we're talking about a large scale development, or that property's not multifamily, it's manufacturing. Okay, is what it's zoned for. The big piece of property that you pointed out. And we're talking typically those are large dollar, and that's the kind of thing those developers do. On the other hand, we're talking about asking a family to foot that, even if that estimate is high, even if you cut that $130,000 in half, that's $65,000, and I think that's asking a lot. And then we have the problem of, that's another discussion about people on septic when there's sewer right out in front. But, so that's kind of where I'm torn right now, but between, and unfortunately this is a tough one, because usually these come in and they're in the middle of nowhere. I mean, they're not within 5 miles of a sewer connection.
That is correct. Pretty much all of the sewer waivers that we have granted have been significantly greater distances, thousands of feet away from the nearest collection point.
And, it's, I wish I had a crystal ball and I could see what's coming up there. It's, but you look everywhere and large tracts of property are being covered with homes. And, okay, so somebody's buying this tract and they're going to build a house, and that may forestall it for a while. Yeah. Commissioners, anybody have anything else?
I have a question. So at what point do we have the owners connect to our sewer system? Because the septic was just a temporary, is my understanding, until there's a sewer system available, and then they have to connect. So
Well-
why are we not enforcing that on these other properties if they're close enough?
There's a couple of different triggers for that to happen. If we're talking about purely a commercial property, once the sewer is extended in front of the property, or they have access to it, I believe the Code of Ordinances requires them to make a connection. In the case of a residential style property or residential property, after it's extended, they don't have that automatic trigger to make a connection. The trigger comes in when that existing septic system fails. Instead of replacing or rebuilding that system, they then have to connect to that system.
And so how does the city know if something fails?
Yeah, but let me be clear here. As John was noting, we have these provisions in our Code of Ordinance. In the time I've been here, almost 10 years, to my knowledge, we've never gone out to a residential homeowner and said, your septic system failed, there's a sewer line, now you got to connect to it. So again, you may have to run the sewer across the street, you've got to run it up, back to your house and connect it. You got to sometimes deal with your septic system. You now have to pay impact fees, tap fees you didn't have before. So while it's in the code, I just want to caution, the time I've been here, and even when I've asked those folks who've been around, tell me where we've actually done that, we generally haven't. Now, it could be that at some point, somebody buys this house, you go to working septic system. When it fails, they may evaluate it and say, I'm tired of dealing with it. We'll choose to do it. I just want to caution that the city, to my knowledge, has not traditionally gone out and required homeowners to do that going forward. And we may have. In the time I've been here, we've not. So talk to you after. You can point out which ones we've done that to. I know we've tried to do it and haven't. But then the other issue you've got is if somebody else develops need the sewer, who pays for that connection? But if you're going to make them do it in the future, make them do it now.
So we're not forcing those that are on septic to get onto the system, but we're going to force these people to extend the line and be on the city's.
That's right.
So,
yeah.
Well, here's the, and I know there's a word for it and it escapes me, and I'll just say the rock and the hard place. If we approve this waiver tonight and allow this property to stay on septic, it then makes it that much harder when something happens on the property to the west of them, because now that sewer line, and it's kind of a domino effect, whereas if we force these people to cough up all this cash and extend the sewer line, it makes it easier to force the next person and the next person. Again, if we were talking about a large-scale development, this would be, for me, a no-brainer. But it's, the fact that it's a single family, it gives me I have a lot of trouble with it. And certainly them staying on septic is consistent with what's in the neighborhood. But that's the decision we have to make tonight, Commissioners, as to whether we want to approve this waiver or deny it and force them to extend the sewer main. Go ahead, Ricky.
One more question, if I could. Let's say that let's say that we go ahead and grant the waiver, and then a year or two down the line, this property sells, and the new owners come in, and now they want to connect to the sewer because it's there, but they're gonna face the same problem. So I guess what I'm getting at is the option's already there to connect to the sewer. What's happening to the west, I get it, but I see a lot of opportunity for development out there. And you're gonna have major development that are all connected to sewer, and then you're gonna have 4 or 5 properties that are still septic right in the middle of everything. That have the opportunity to do that. Is there a way, like what we do with commercial, like at 1103, they build the automotive place, and they stub out and they put their sewer line up to a certain point, and then the next one that comes in can connect to that and down and so on and so on. It's just a question. Can we do that for residential for this particular case?
So for this particular case, so because they're going through the platting process, this is why they are having to, it is a requirement for them to connect to sanitary sewer. However, due to their engineering providing the cost estimate for that, that is why they're producing the waiver or requesting the waiver to not connect to that sanitary sewer in order to do that on-site septic facility. So if you were to deny the waiver and have them connect to that sanitary sewer, they would have to stub for future, essentially, developments that would, as the properties either to the west or to the east of them, as they come in to do the platting process, they would also be required to connect to sanitary sewer as well. So though they may be on septic currently right now, if they do come in to plat their property to develop it, they would be required to go through the process to connect to sanitary sewer.
But they have a 24-inch sewer line already in the ground running across the front of their property. So here's something else for you to think about. You back up to the planer, to just the line map. See all those blue lines? Well, not up in the subdivision, but the one that comes down from the city water tower and the one that runs up Wiederstein. Who paid to put those in? The city paid to put those in, not the residents. So we're willing to provide water service to these people as a city function, but if they want sewer service, they have to pay for it. This is something else to think about. All right, once again, we'll consider a motion to either approve or deny this waiver.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the waiver for WA 2021-004.
I have a motion to approve from Commissioner Ray. Do I have a second? No second?
Second.
That was a second from Commissioner Broad, correct? Yes, okay. So I have a motion and a second to approve WA 2021-004. Any further questions or discussion? Call for the vote.
Aye.
No.
Abstained.
No.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye. Okay, so now I'm going to have to go back, because you guys complicated it. It was aye, and I voted aye. Okay, so we had 3 ayes. And what? 3 nays? And 1 abstention, correct? Okay. And according, I think, to our bylaws, an abstention is recorded effectively as a no vote. So that's that motion fails 3-4. So I'm assuming then. No. All right. Let's do it one more time. Who voted aye? Okay, that's 3. Who voted nay? 1, 2, 3, and then we had the 1 abstention. Okay. And unfortunately, it takes 4 affirmative votes one way or the other. So I'm assuming then, Commissioners, someone wants to make a motion to deny this waiver.
I mean,
Pardon?
failed to pass.
So it's dead.
Don't need to take another vote.
So it's denied. Okay. All right. That's why we have the attorney around. Okay. All right then. So that's. Let me make a note here. Failed equals deny because Dan said so. No. All right. Okay. Moving on to item D. PC 2021-018, consider and act upon a request for approval of a preliminary plat for Bush subdivision, an approximately 5-acre tract of land, Lot 1, Block 1, generally located 4,700 feet east of the intersection of Old Wheaterstein Road and Cibolo Valley Drive, City of Schertz, Guadalupe County, Texas. Let me ask a question before we start. Okay, it's always been, typically we do the on-site sewage facility waiver first, before we do the plat, because so many times I'm under the impression that if the waiver fails, then they don't really want to do the plat. So, Dan, what do you know? Should we just go ahead and?
So once that plat's filed, we only have so much time to act on the plat.
Okay, all right.
If you don't act, it's going to be deemed approved. So
Gotcha.
you need to take action.
Okay, go ahead, Megan.
So this is for PC 2021-018, Megan Harrison, planner for the Bush subdivision preliminary plat. As we've seen earlier this evening, this is the Bush subdivision outlined here in green. The applicant is proposing to preliminary plat approximately 5 acres of land, as illustrated here, which is currently zoned single-family residential agricultural district. The property will be serviced by the city for water through the extension that is along the Old Wheaterstein. And due to the waiver being denied, the preliminary plat will have to extend the sanitary sewer. Therefore, the plat will need to be conditionally approved with the condition that the sewer waiver notes that are currently on the plat right now will need to be removed prior to that final plat recordation. So the site will be serviced by City of Schertz Water and City of Schertz Sewer. Also just wanted to mention again that there is that 25-foot right-of-way dedication that they are doing along Old Wheaterstein Road. All departments, engineering, public works, fire, and planning did review this plat with no objections. Therefore, staff is making that recommendation of approval with the condition that the sewer waiver notes will be removed from the plat before that final plat recordation.
All right, thank you, Megan. Commissioners? All right. right. No, what we're looking for this evening, again, this is, plats are our approval authority, so we're looking for a motion to approve or deny. PC 2021-018. And do we need to include, to say something about with the changes?
So it'll be a recommendation, it'll be a conditional, it'll be a approval with conditions that the sewer waiver notes will be removed prior to that final plat recordation.
All right, thank you, Megan. Yes, sir. I mean, if we no discussion or questions, if someone would like to make a motion.
I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve the preliminary plat for the Bush subdivision as presented, with the condition the sewer recommendation on the plat will have to be removed and a sewer line installed.
Okay, I have a motion to approve with those conditions from Commissioner Greenwald. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, and a second from Commissioner Haynes. Any further comments, discussion, questions? Call the vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. 7 aye, none opposed. Motion to approve passes. Moving on to item 7, requests and announcements. Request by commissioners to place items on a future planning and zoning agenda. Do we have anything? Anyone? Item B, announcements by commissioners. So, anybody have anything? Okay, announcements by city staff. Anything this evening?
So I have one reminder. I sent the email out a few weeks back, I think, but there is that joint P&Z City Council workshop that is scheduled for Friday, July 9th from 8:30 to 10 in council chambers. Hope to see all of you there. And then we did receive one new site plan. This is at the corner of 15, 18, and 10. This is the existing gas station that's there. They will be coming in to request a specific use permit to make some modifications to that existing building and to the gas canopy structures. So that's currently being reviewed by staff. The site plan is in conjunction with that SUP. So at some point, that SUP will be brought in front of you guys. That's it.
All right, thank you. All right, there being no further business, this meeting's adjourned.